Jesus and his disciples left from there and began a journey through Galilee. But he did not wish anyone to know about it. He was teaching his disciples and telling them, the Son of Man is to be handed over to men, and they will kill him. And 3 days after the death, the Son of Man will rise. But they did not understand the saying. They were afraid to question him. They came to Capernaum, and once inside the house, he began to ask them, "What were you arguing about on the way?" They remained silent. They had been discussing among themselves on the way who was the greatest. Then he sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "If anyone wishes to be first, he shall be the last of all and the servant of all." And taking a child, he placed it in their midst. Putting his arms around him, he said to them, "Whoever receives one child such as this in my name receives me. And whoever receives me receives not me, but the one who sent me." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Well, again, a great thank you for coming today to introduce our concelebrants today. Father Fensick graduated from prep. Emily, his daughter, is leading us in song today. We have Father Ben, graduated class of 80, who is now the chaplain at Pope John. Okay, he has a marauder. He's infiltrating there.
I'm still on the road.
Okay. Father John Mullen, who has been here many years, who's a guidance counselor, and who is a teacher here as well as at Fordham. We have Father Ken Boa, whom you all know is our president here at St. Peter's. We have Father Matt Cassidy, who is teaching history here, spent many years in Ghana. And Father Felix, who's a pastor here and really does ministry work here in Jersey City. So we thank them for being here as well as yourselves. So I have my notebook. I hope you're ready. I come in great thanksgiving, and I know the focus is certainly on myself, but really we're talking about blessings from God on the people of our lives. I think Lou Gehrig said, "I'm the luckiest man on the face of the earth." And that's certainly true for myself. 35 years teaching at St. Peter's Prep, a couple of years at Retreat House in Monroe, New York, 7 years in Nigeria, West Africa. And we could talk about a building, and it was a great celebration on Thursday as we dedicated, a new part of St. Peter's, a renovation, and all of you who have been certainly part of that. But really, St. Peter's is the people in our life. Just a little bit about myself. I'm at, we call it Murray Weigel Hall, which is on the Fordham campus. There are about 50 plus Jesuits who are there, and it's very humbling, certainly for myself. Many of them are not well, in wheelchairs. Ray Bucko, class of 72, who is a brilliant scholar, spent many years with the native Indians out of Creighton. He's in a wheelchair with Parkinson's, can't really see very well. Father Joe O'Hare, a great president at Fordham University for about 18 years. He was in charge of America Magazine. In a wheelchair, people help him every day. Father Tom Smith, class of 62, has had difficulty with his legs, just had an operation, also wheeled in every day. Father Dan O'Brien, who taught me geometry at Brooklyn Prep when I was a sophomore, is across from the corridor with me, and 24-hour nursing care. Father Tom O'Connor, who taught chemistry here, he is there. Say hello to him. We brought some prep shirts to him, and he's wheeled out different times to take a tour around the campus for there. We have also Tom Sheridan from the university. Father Jim Joyce is there as he battles with cancer, but also very well. He took the bus down to the game last night at Union City. But Father Joyce is there as well. We have 11:30 Mass every day. And again, it's very humbling as people are wheeled in. Other people who are a little bit more capable are also there. And I really have everything. Kind of like a nursing home and a hotel. And I'm kind of very free. So I tell people, well, why are you there? I'm not quite sure myself, but I told people I'm going to graduate school of handwriting, okay? And, Yankee Stadium is only, 2 stops on the D train, but my job really there as a Dodger fan is to bring down the evil empire. And I just happened to borrow the judge's bat just for a few days, okay? I gotta be careful anyway. Certainly I have an opportunity. I take the D train. Jack Wazowski gave me some Metro North tickets. I've used those. I've been down to Lincoln Center. And January 11th, Father Mullen has invited me to the opera. Okay, and Stephen Williams, he's a prep graduate. His sister got married. He's going to ride a horse in that opera. And so Father Mullen's inviting me. All this culture, I don't know. I've been to the Botanical Gardens. Hopefully get to the Bronx Zoo. I have Mass at Cristo Rey, which is a Jesuit school. And I'm going to go down there at 7:15 on October the 3rd. Been at the Westchester campus of Fordham University. I didn't know they had a Westchester campus. But maybe get involved just a little bit there, probably celebrating the Eucharist for them. I had some young ladies, some freshmen over for lunch the other day. Murray Weigel, Megan Dowden, and she brought her 3 roommates there. I met Corey Cattle, Cameron Blair, a few other people on the Fordham campus. So in some way, I hope to explore POTS, which is part of the solution. I went over there the other day. I have to fill out some forms to volunteer. Father Ned Murphy, Jesuits, started really a soup kitchen for the homeless in the Bronx. So I hope to get involved, a little bit of that, and maybe Calvary Hospital, which is a hospice hospital in the Bronx. So still finding my way and feeling my way. Every morning I try to remember, I'm not true every morning, but I write a letter to somebody who's on death row. I began that when I was teaching seniors last couple of years. So people have been on death row 18, 19 years. So I just write a letter, I print everything. And I've heard a little response back from a couple of people. So that's my little apostolate. I can do that every day. Fordham Road is quite different. You know, you step outside the campus, and it's a whole other ball game. You know, ambulances, fire trucks. It's just another world, and kind of very humbled seeing women with their laundry and trying to get into the back of the bus, and people crowding around. And I say, wow, just the everyday person probably in the Bronx. You know, I have it so good. So it's kind of, Thomas Merton one time, those who had me in class, he had this experience at 4th and Walnut. And he said, don't all these people realize that they're all alive with God's presence? This is God dwelling in them. Don't they realize that? We should all genuflect to them because they're alive with God. And I've tried to do that in terms of prayer, try to look at the people, either there or on the D train, and kind of recognize, don't they realize kind of God's presence there? Certainly, I miss teaching. I've gone to a couple of games. The Fordham Prep game. I was able to watch on television the game against Bergen Catholic the other day. Last night, I wasn't going to come, and I watched play-by-play of Prep's game against Union City. I can recall certainly those who are here from 1980, before I went to Nigeria. The Prep football team had lost 18 straight games. The seniors who graduated never won a game. It's hard for the number one team in the state for people to kind of recognize that. But certainly to recall those memories. We thank Terry Bruno, who keeps up the tradition of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, so we're happy about that. But certainly I am blessed. Yourselves taught me what it means to be a priest, to be humble, to be a servant, and to be respectful. I tried to make that real every student that I got to know, to always respect a student and never think you're a big deal. I can recall the 60s when I was here before I was ordained. I was very naive. Tom Lean and Joe O'Donnell took me my first Broadway play. They bought me the first beer too. They weren't of age, but that was all right. Had the opportunity those days to know Joe Abanovich. He was a student there, and they were nice. They could have really taken me apart. As a 24-year-old scholastic, I was shaking. I got to know Joe, had the privilege of being the minister of his marriage, being able to witness God blessing them with twins after they lost their son, being part of their own marriages. So great blessings of, and Louise, if you want a crumb cake, better than Carlos any day. In the 70s with, just to mention names, Wazowskis, the Lewises, Ricardos, DeMarcos, Feeneys. 1981, my sister emailed me or called me from Bay Ridge of Brooklyn. He said, Fernando Valenzuela just beat the Yankees. You can be happy the Dodgers won. Always remember funny things that you can remember. 2005 to 7, being in Nigeria, in Lagos. Jim D'Angelo, Jim Keenan, visiting me in Lagos and dancing up the aisle as they brought up the gifts of bread and wine. Certainly being part of marriages and baptisms, 200 or so retreats. I am blessed. Had an opportunity today. We were at the funeral mass for John Mahoney's dad, Ryan Ha, who was a sophomore here. He was at the funeral mass. And the class of 2002 showed up in great force. You know, the readings today, the first reading, people were against the prophet because he called them up short. You know, and they were hard-hearted, and they were jealous, and they were blind, really, to what Jesus, or really the Old Testament, what the prophet was about. In the second reading that Paul Schetzel read, is what we hope to be. Peaceful, gentle, full of mercy and good works. Talks about a way of living one's life. In the gospel, Jesus tells the disciples that he's going to die and be rejected. And they want none of this. Don't give us that. We don't want to hear that. They want to be first. They want entitlement. They want to be in charge. They want authority. They want power and influence. And Jesus calls them up short. And the great image, to have an image, Jesus takes a little child, in some ways kind of blessed. It's kind of like the mission statement of Jesus. All Jesuit schools have a mission statement. But maybe the mission statement of Jesus, he takes a little child, and he says this child who's dependent, who's innocent, who's vulnerable, he says, whoever accepts him accepts me, namely Jesus, and accepts the Father. It's kind of the mystery of God being present. And we could say that every student, every one of us, kind of the mystery of God being present. You know, it's really what I mentioned, what Thomas Merton talked about. What Gerard Manley Hopkins, great Jesuit poet, says, Christ plays in 10,000 places, lovely in limbs and lovely in the Father's eyes, through the features of men's faces. Kind of like Elizabeth Browning says, earth is crammed with heaven, and every common bush on fire with God. Some way, everybody is precious. And it's been a very difficult last couple of months with the abuse scandal, and shocks everybody, whether you're Christian or not, certainly our own selves. You know, it's very disconcerting and kind of takes you back. But what Jesuit education is about, it's a way of living. You know, really, no borders, and when people are hurt by earthquakes or typhoons or rains in the Carolinas, we're called to be servants, to be number one. And a great challenge for us today. Who do we look to? I always think Oscar Romero, who will be canonized as a saint on October 14th. He was a man up to the age of 50, was all books. And then he learned reality. As Pope Francis said, reality changes you. And he realized what was going on in El Salvador, in his own country. And he changes. And he shot while celebrating liturgy. But he became a changed person. Dorothy Day, don't call me a saint. You'll put me on a pedestal and think you're different from me. Everybody, and she was great. She lived with the poor. She hopefully, Cardinal Dolan is really the forefront of her own desire, not her desire, desire of the church for her to be canonized. We also have Pedro Rupe, a great Jesuit, who really started that term, man for others, man and woman for others. He began that. He himself, for 8 years, suffered a stroke and shut his mouth, never complained when the Pope kind of castigated him. But just a terrific man, and we have a Rupe Week at St. Peter's Prep, really in his memory. And for myself, I think, sorry for going so long here, but I always think of Jimmy Carter, who taught his 800th Sunday school class. At the age of 92, he still does Habitat for Humanity. Pope Francis, who says that the church is a field hospital. Everybody is wounded. Cardinals, don't wait for people to ring a doorbell. Go out and get the smell of the sheep. Father Dan Berrigan, who taught me English at Brooklyn Prep, even at the age of 92, up at Murray Weigel, went to Calvary Hospital and ministered to those who were ill, and he himself was arrested about 10 times, but all for justice. St. Peter's Prep, a building? Not really. We always think of the people and the great building that we have. It's always a reminder of the people who are in our lives. I'll always remember Tim Quill's son. Tim died of cancer, and his son was a freshman at Summit High School, and he wanted to transfer to Prep. He said, I want to walk in the footsteps of my father. I want to go through the corridors and the stairways that my father, Tim Quill, went through. He did that for a year, was happy, went back to Summit, graduated from Bucknell, etc. But it's always kind of a reminder. Certainly, class of 2002, we meet 3 times a year. Some guys haven't had a drink in 10 years, but we toast them, and they're together. They said, I could have made triple time today, but I want to be with my classmates. At weddings, you know, maybe 15, 18 guys are in the wedding party, all from Prep. People who had made friends at St. Peter's Prep. And you know, tough times also. We think of the deaths of Jeff Cachel, B.J. Janone, Dan Finn, Dan Cooney, Leo Melito, Jeff Howens, to mention a few. Not always easy. Prep Spirituality Committee says Prep for Life, takes care of people or tries to, or is available for people who need some help. And so today, great Thanksgiving for the people of St. Peter's Prep. Families, coaches, seeing God present in each other. And hopefully at the hot dogs and hamburgers, be able to tell stories that maybe weren't known at that time, okay? The mystery of the presence of God. So we're all blessed. And I think that's what we celebrate today. As somebody says, it takes a village to bring up a child. And so maybe the focus is on me. But I'm just one of so many people involved, you know, in a little bit of education here at St. Peter's. It takes all of us to continue to make St. Peter's the presence of God. It takes all of us to continue to be our pride and glory.